Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right. I almost forgot the word cartoonist.
You and all, so did all the editors.
Yeah, no kidding. Here's, I was just talking about the other day, this is like, in fact, you brought it up, the perspective section for Newsweek magazine.
Mm-hmm.
When you and I were really coming up in the business in the 80s and 90s, it was massively popular. They usually ran 2 to 3 cartoons and pull quotes from various luminaries or not so luminary, and hugely popular. I've talked to editors who worked there at the time, said it was crazy. They were so jealous that it got that much attention. So what's one of the first things they killed when they could, Ted? Now take your time.
Yeah, I don't have to answer that question. We know the answer.
They killed it was just like, it was by far the most popular part of that magazine. So of course they killed it.
Well,
isn't that
it had to go.
Yes. The jealousy, the petty jealousy. Kind of hard to believe that print is no longer relevant.
Can't even imagine.
Geniuses like that who ran it.
Scott, we've talked about that a lot. You just brought up something. So let's just say, okay, we know that print newspapers and magazines were run by retards.
Yes.
But even if they hadn't been, even if they'd been run by mega geniuses, could they have survived the internet?
Absolutely.
How?
They could have conformed. They could have worked hard. There was a movement. I don't know if you recall it when they launched, when Bill Gates introduced a Windows 98. And for some reason, if you were one of the most richest men on the planet, you had to talk like Kermit the Frog. That was the trade-off. And so we're going to have you so you can have many micropayments when you visit certain pages. And so newspapers could have fallen and actually promoted and supported that idea that you got pennies for a page view, let's say, and you, Ted, me, Scott, would be billed at the end of the month. And if we visited pages that charged, the amount would still have been nominal, $12, $10, because it would have been pennies for views, but that would have meant millions, if not billions of dollars for newspapers. That's number one. Number two, they could have seen want ads. I'm not the only one with this story, and it's short. I found some software. I just started at the Birmingham News in 1996. I found some software, $35, Ted, $35. And I went to my publisher and I said, listen, I found the software where we can post our want ads online and that people can cross-reference them. Let's say you're looking for a 1968 Super Beetle. Let's just say you could taka, and oh my gosh, it's in Bessemer, which is a town right next to Birmingham. I can go buy this.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me. When you blow in a dog's face, that kind of burr. He had the same look on his face, and I'll never forget this quote as long as I live. He said, "Why would I want to convince people not to look at my newspaper?" And it still makes my brain hurt because you're saying, I tried to tell him you're adding value. So I pay $5 for a want ad.
I assume this same newspaper had television listings and movie listings?
They were one of the last ones in the state to have them.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the same logic, why would I want people to watch TV and not read my newspaper? Well, because they can do both. Firstly.
They can and do both.
And did do both when there were newspapers. By the way, the Birmingham News no longer exists, just to nobody's surprise. It's no longer a print edition. It's on al.com as a digital version of itself. But the Birmingham News no longer exists. Those are the geniuses who ran this newspaper, that ran the business into the ground. Could they have survived digital? Absolutely. Could you imagine? They lost literally billions of dollars, and I'm talking tens of billions of dollars when they lost the ad revenue from want ads. Newspapers made bank on those. And there's a threat. There was a way to combat it, and they didn't do it. So Craigslist, for some reason, the Craig guy hated newspapers. I think he hated the
Craig Newmark. No, I don't think that's true, Scott. Do you have any evidence to support that? Because
he said,
I had read interviews where he was asked about the role of Craigslist in destroying the classified ads model of newspapers, and he said that was never his intent.
Oh, I remember when he launched it. That was, if I'm remembering correctly, and bear in mind that's not a given. But I really do remember him being giddy about destroying the corporate overlords who controlled it. In fact, he went out of his way not to make them free. There are certain sections that are money. He said he wanted to make $100,000 a year
for himself.
For himself, and anything else past that, it's going to be free, and the internet must be free, and all that other bullshittery. And so my memory is that he did put the newspapers, or more to the point, the corporate overlords of the newspapers in his crosshairs. He was quite the revolutionary. The symbol for Craigslist is the peace sign. He's got a lot of tie-dye and hippy-dippy bullshittery all through the side.
He was. I remember having breakfast in a cafe in the Asbury district of San Francisco, which is hippie ground zero for the United States and the world. And none other than Craig Newmark waddled into to grab his cup of Joe in the morning.
Did you talk to him?
Everyone was like, "There's Craig Newmark." No, I'm not a very social person. But this happened also, I don't know about you, Scott. When I was as I've gotten older, I'm much more open to talking to strangers. But when I was young, I wouldn't do it. Like in my 20s, I just wouldn't talk to people.
I would admit it freaked them out, because I'm like on the train, the subway, whatever. Hey, how you doing? Let's be friends.
Yeah, you're like a dog.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I'm more like a cat. So I was like,
yes, you are.
I don't know about you. And so, now if I saw Craig Newmark, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Newmark, nice meeting you. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions or whatever?" But no, as I get older, I'm much more. I'll do that, but not.
Yeah. Well, me too. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. I mean, they could shoot you to death, so that would kind of suck.
It's been a long life.
And a good one, mostly.
Yeah.
Not all, but yeah. Not even most, really. But
most. Yeah, but it's a life, and it was the
one I got.
The good parts were fantastic. So pretty great. And part of it was being an editorial cartoonist on staff, which I know you never enjoyed that particular pleasure. It was
you're right, Scott. And it really it's seriously, honestly, the biggest unrealized dream of my life is never having gotten to work inside a newspaper office. Seriously.
Even though I told you time and time again that it was run by morons.
Yeah.
I don't think you believed me. I really don't think. I think to this day you still aren't quite sure I'm telling the full story.
And
that's fine.
I believe you intellectually, but viscerally, it's hard to. You've never lied to me, as far as I know. So, I'm sure you're telling me the truth, and also your testimony is also widely confirmed by all of our colleagues.
Yeah.
But it's also, everyone's like, "Ted, you don't want to do this. You're so lucky."
Oh, no, you did. You did. No, I'm not. I was never one of those guys who said, "Ted, you really dodged a bullet." You didn't. It was fun. There are elements of it that were a pain in the ass, especially if you had a moron editor. That was the worst thing that could happen to you. And I was really lucky that for the most part, I'd say about 2 or 3 of the newspapers, I had fantastic editors who just left me the fuck alone and let me do my thing, trusted me to do my job, knew that I took it extremely seriously. I would tell them, you can't take this job more seriously than I do. It's not possible. Now, the litmus test was I had some editors who said, "Yes, I can." Those are the ones that you went, "Oh, this is going to be unfun." Because they really
full spectrum retard.
Well, I told you I had an editor who changed a line, wanted me to change a line in my cartoon. And I told him, it's not really funny. Yes, it is. I go, "No, I do this for a living. I don't want to be rude, but this just isn't as funny as my line." He goes, "Just run it."
Funny man.
So you would have had to deal with shit like that from time.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I only had and of course the closest I ever came to being on staff anywhere was the LA Times, and that ended great. So
yeah, good people, people, good times,
good people,
fun in the sun.
Yeah, no, never a bad surprise. Just everything steady as she goes. Everything's on the up and up. It was great. Yeah, always appreciated, treated with respect and love courtesy.
It was love, wasn't it? It was almost love of a family, a
It's
significant, a severely dysfunctional family,
highly abusive family.
Yeah, maybe like an Ozark family hooked on opioids type of family.
Well, in fact, definitely pharmaceuticals were involved.
Oh yeah, Dr. Pat didn't come into the picture till later, right?
No, he was like this. He was like, your mom gets rid of your abusive dad and remarries, and the new guy seems so nice and smiley, and then it turns out he's worse.
Bum bum bum. Yeah,
that's kind of what happened.
So that's where we are. I mean, like I said, the perspective section of Newsweek, massively popular. I mean, Mike Lukovich made a friggin' career out of it. I'm still to this day not sure why the Atlanta Journal-Constitution let him be the de facto cartoonist for Newsweek when, there's a few things going on in Georgia, I suspect, that demanded attention.
Scott, I understand that completely. Like having a star that becomes, like, for example, the Chicago Sun-Times allowed Mike Royko to effectively just be a national writer.
Yeah.
And it puts them on the map. It's like then you're not just the little Chicago Sun-Times read on the L. You're the fucking Chicago Sun-Times, a national fucking presence. I get it.
Okay. Yeah, that had to be the motivation. It just seemed odd to me. But yeah, you put it that way. You're absolutely right. Speaking of odd to us.
Yes, let's get into
speaking of publications that are still around, the Atlantic Monthly magazine, full disclosure, by the way, I think I need to say this, don't I? My son works for them. My son is their DevOps guy. He handles all their digital, deep digital issues. So he does work for them and gets a paycheck from the Atlantic, just to be fully transparent.
Cool.
But they're reporting this today. I sent the story to Ted. Yes. And I'm laughing, and you'll know why I'm laughing in a second, because Kamala Harris, remember her? She held a high position of some sort in the Biden administration. Remember the Biden administration? Well, if you
remember
do,
that, you're not everyone. There's one guy who definitely doesn't remember it.
You've got a leg up on, Joe Biden, but she's coming out in this article saying that, well, she couldn't say anything because it would just seem so self-serving if she did, and he shouldn't have been allowed to make the decision on his own. And I'm just going, okay, everybody, time out. Ted Rall, Scott Stantis, a handful of other commentators had the temerity to say Joe Biden was addled. You said it before he was even sworn in. I came on board on that shortly thereafter, the swearing in. But we were saying this guy should not be president. He does not have the cognitive abilities to be president of the United States. And you and I were yelled at, insulted, threatened, marginalized, all of those things. How dare you? Because, Joe Biden saved us from, the second term of Donald Trump. Wah, wah. In fact, he's the one who introduced an older.
By the way, let's just say Donald Trump had been reelected in 2020, and that Joe Biden hadn't, quote unquote, saved us from that. Donald Trump 2.0, this we only know with the benefit of hindsight, of course, would not have been as bad as Trump 2.0 is now.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
He had 4 years to get ready to plan Project 2020-25, and the Democrats stirred him up like poking a wasp's nest with all the fucking lawfare shit that they waged against him. Yeah. They drove him fucking batshit crazy and made him even further crazy far right than he was before. He would have just been coasting along. Most second terms, as you know, are pretty uneventful. Most presidents.
Oh, they're usually failures. Yeah.
Yeah. They basically, usually that's when all the scandals come home to roost. Yeah. And so, nothing. I mean, this second term is a fucking shit show, and we're only 8 months in.
I know. I know. It feels like 8 years, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so this is so Joe Biden saved us from nothing.
No, and when Kamala Harris or any of those ilk, when you have Jake Tapper, and I like Jake personally, and I know you do too, and I actually got into an argument with Jake's dad at a convention once. It was kind of fun. But when he comes out with a book, oh, by the way, you know what we've discovered? Fuck you. And the horse you rode in on, there were two guys out here in the wilderness, as I said, marginalized and belittled daily, because
it was from our personal experience, because we both had parents go through it.
Yeah.
It was it was just simple. Honestly, it was pattern recognition, Scott. It was we spent like millions of Americans who have served and are serving as caretakers for their aging parents, or usually aging. And, we were just like, the guy on TV at the White House looks and sounds and walks and talks a lot like my mom did and is and was. And those two things look very, very similar. That's all it was.
And the apologists, Ted, how many people told you? I can tell you at least that many who said, oh, he has a stutter.
Yeah.
You know what? A stutter doesn't make you stupid. A stutter doesn't make you forget.
It's a stutter. And that's not what Joe Biden ever did, ever.
No, but I had guys who I used to respect who would tell me that exact thing. That, oh, well, he just has a stutter. Horse shit. No, he's old. He
doesn't actually have a stutter, actually.
Well, didn't you say that he was quoted as being pissed off that people...
Yeah, he said that he had conquered his stutter as a young man. He's right. And, it's not like Joe Biden's not a public figure. You can go find a YouTube speeches of him from the 70s and 80s, doing campaign appearances, speaking on the floor of the Senate. And there's no stutter.
It wasn't a stutter. He was walking. If you remember the first year, his staff told him not to. He was doing the Mr. Burns limp wrist walk. And they told him not to do that because you look old, because it is the sign of dementia when you walk like that.
Right.
So for the Kamala Harrises, for the Jake Tappers, for all of you, Johnny come lately to finally admitting that this guy should not have been president of the United States and certainly should not have run for re-election. Fuck you. Because
I second that. Fuck you.
All it took was you and I watching him on TV. That's all we didn't know him. We didn't have access to the White House. We didn't have access to any of the staff, but the staff had access to him. And we just saw what we saw. We saw what we saw. We heard what we heard. And we made what was obviously a really easy analysis of what this guy was doing. So thank you for seconding my fuck you, by the way.
You're welcome. I'll always second your fuck yous for the most part. So let me quote a little bit this is from an excerpt from her new book. Of all the people in the White House, I was in the worst position to make the case that he should drop out. I knew it would come off to him as incredibly self-serving if I advised him not to run. First of all, you were exactly the person who was in the best position to make the case that he should drop out because of the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which you swore as vice president to uphold. And that gives the vice president the unique position, which I admit is awkward and probably should not have been written this way, but it was. Okay. And you knew this when you became vice president, or you ought to have known it. And that if you think that the president has dementia, it's incumbent upon you to call for a vote of the cabinet to see with a majority vote of the cabinet can have him removed. Yes, it would have seemed self-serving. You would have been accused of that, but it's your fucking duty to your country and to your party to do that. And you know what? If you can't take the heat, as Truman said, get out of the fucking kitchen. So again, more of the quote here. He would see it as naked ambition, perhaps as poisonous disloyalty. Who cares what he fucking thought? You're not working for Joe Biden. You work for the American people. And even if my only message was don't let the other guy win. So she says, I don't believe it was incapacity. If I believed that, I would have said so.
No,
as loyal as I am to President Biden, I am more loyal to my country. Well, there's no evidence of that whatsoever, Scott.
Right. Well, she's never really been, a pillar, a profile in courage. Let's be clear on that. And this is revisionist bullshit. This is the stuff that you and I hate about people who, take history, twist it, and report it incorrectly.
We were all there. It just happened.
Yes,
it was last year.
And she said he was not. Okay, I'm trying to follow the logic of what you just said. She was not diminished.
Yeah.
But he shouldn't have run for re-election.
Right.
Okay, those two
Capacity.
thoughts don't hold.
Yeah, it's like either he had the capacity or he didn't, right?
Precisely. And I'm sorry if my voice gets high, and I hate my voice.
I mean, I guess okay, let's just say she's inarticulate, so we have to kind of make up words for her. But like, imagine, I guess she could have argued, okay, he was capable of doing the job, but maybe he wasn't capable of campaigning well enough to be reelected. Maybe that's what she's saying, but she didn't say it. So therefore, I'm not going to give her credit for saying something she didn't say.
Right.
She could have made that case. She could have said, look, he was a good president. He could do it. He could show up but we already know from the auto pen scandal that he wasn't signing many of the documents, including, as the Republicans are making a lot of hay out of, a lot of pardons of hundreds, maybe thousands of people. He didn't sign those things. He didn't even know about them. No, which is really the important thing.
I know. Did you the comment from his aides, not from him, not in front of a microphone, not out of his mouth, but from his people? I guess he still has people. Was that he knew exactly what the documents were. And I'm going, okay, yeah, what? You knew there was probably paper and ink involved. That's what you knew.
Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true, and it can't be true. Then she also says, like, she also claimed, and this I think is interesting, that she had to prove that his aides were out to get her, which I've heard. We both heard.
She said this.
Yeah, she said
you and I both heard that.
Biden's aides' thinking was zero sum. If she's shining, he's dimmed. None of them grasped that if I did well, he did well. That's true. She's right about that. That given the concerns about his age, my visible success as his vice president was vital. It would serve as a testimony to his judgment in choosing me. She's right about that. And reassurance that if something happened, the country was in good hands. She's also right about that. My success was important for him. The fact that, he didn't realize that might have been an indication that also he wasn't that capable.
Well, and his aides were jealously protecting this guy. And I think now we're hearing stories that's obviously what was going on there. But Ted, she's a grown human being, vice president of the United States. Where was she? For 4 years, she was nowhere. We had no idea who she was. She should have been on every podcast, every shitty backwater podcast, like, I don't know, the DMZ America podcast would have been a great place to start. She wasn't doing any of that, Ted. She didn't feel she had to, because first of all, she's lazy. And I know there's you're just being racist. I go, no, I don't care. There are lazy people in this world. And she has never shown herself to be, I'm going to work Teddy Roosevelt hours.
I'm going to earn every vote. Yeah.
I'm going to go out there.
Look at Zohran Mamdani. He met personally over 1 million New Yorkers during his campaign.
That's astounding. And it works. So she should have and could have been out there introducing herself, like I said, on different podcasts, doing tons of interviews. She did none. Zero, zilch, nada. You know why? A, lazy. B, incompetent. Yeah. Ted Rall had I don't know if you know him, Ted Rall, brilliant guy.
Some hack.
He came up with probably the best description of her and I think probably the most generous and frankly the nicest, is that she is the most untalented politician of her generation. She never quite understood that you have to earn this. And we didn't know her. I mean, you brought up the point several times during the campaign in 24. We didn't know her. No. We should know her. We should know. I mean, we should think that we had lunch with her,
Yeah.
And we didn't know. And during the campaign, look at what she does. This just to fill out my hypotheses here. She frankly had a great convention. She came out. Her speech was well done, well received.
True.
Terrific. Then she falls off the face of the planet.
Yeah. Where the fuck is she then?
And she has 1 or 2 events a week. I mean, it's just like, what? Then she has the debate with Trump where she clearly
her memoir, Scott, is called 107 Days, right? Why is it called that? Because it was such a short, truncated campaign. Well, if it were me and I had if I had a truncated campaign, I'd be like, we're going to have to run balls to the wall and basically get jam a year and a half into 3 months. That's what we're going to have to do, And
I mentioned Teddy.
Probably should have done about 9 to 10 events a day.
Yes, and she didn't.
Sleep,
she did one.
You'll do that later when you're dead.
My second favorite, TR. If you look at Teddy Roosevelt's schedule, and someone was talking about what he did. He went for a horseback ride, went for a brisk walk, wrote 12 letters, handwritten letters, and then had breakfast. And his cousin said, "Wow, is he feeling okay? That's kind of a slow morning for Teddy."
Yeah, no, everyone said that he was like a fucking tornado.
Yeah, and that's what she should have been for 107 days. You should have, in all seriousness, you should have not been surprised if she was standing with you on the subway platform, just walking, shaking hands. And we didn't get to know her. And that's because maybe
and think about some of the great stunts that like Trump did during the campaign, like the McDonald's thing. That's a great stunt. So great.
But Trump also Rogan invited him on the show. He was on his podcast for 2 hours.
Yeah.
She could have come on there and she could have addressed a very serious issue, which really hurt her deeply. And and we've addressed it here on the podcast, and that's the boy issue. Mm-hmm. That would have been the platform to talk about it and say, you know what, Joe, you're right. There are issues with how we define masculinity in this country. And I think and she could have expounded on that idea, because you and I, unprovoked, unpromoted, unprepared,
unwanted,
could speak to almost any issue that someone asks us about, because we have an IQ above room temperature. She didn't trust herself. So this is, it's making me crazy, Ted. It's just such total bullshit. But to be fair, if I may, change the topic a little bit, because none of this may matter, because World War III is brewing, apparently. Poland has shot down, what exactly did it shoot down?
Russian drones.
Okay, so is that one of those no harm, no foul, no blood, no foul, Ted? In all seriousness, this is an escalation. It's a NATO nation firing on the weapons of Russian weapons in a Russian conflict. To me, this feels like a massive escalation, and it depends on how Putin responds to it. Will he start lobbing missiles into Poland?
No, he's not going to lob missiles into Poland, because that would trigger an Article 5 NATO response. I'm not sure Poland hasn't done that by doing what they did, but please go on.
Look,
I mean, Poland could credibly make the case. Look, here's what's going on. For example, we're living in a world now where just yesterday, and you wouldn't even suggest that we talk about it in today's subject, and we don't have to. But I'm just saying, we're living in a world that it's not that big a deal in a way that Israel bombed Qatar, even though it's a completely sovereign state that's also the host to the biggest U.S. Air Force base in the world, a close U.S. ally that was chosen as neutral territory for negotiations between Israel and Hamas to go after Hamas, and on top of that, failed to kill the right guys and killed a bunch of other dudes. Okay, so the point is, that's like, obviously they bombed a building right in the middle of a sovereign country's capital and killed innocent civilians. Okay. The point is, like, and we're like, now Poland thing, what's going on here clearly is this is Putin's way of sort of, it's poking at the West. It's like, sort of like, we're not really, look, let me be serious. Let me be clear here. Invading another country's airspace with anything, including a small drone, is an act of war. Okay, under international law, you're not allowed to do that. That said, in the real world, little drones are considered sort of like a halvesy, kind of invasion of airspace. In the same way that like a spy plane that flies at 60,000 feet is kind of a halvesy thing. So if you go in and you drop a bomb on someone, that's definitely an invasion of airspace, like Israel did to Qatar, 15 fighter jets, right? Now, if you go in with drones, that's kind of like, well, it's sort of like they're just looking around, right? It's like they're just visiting. So I think it's like viewed, it's sort of meant to be a half measure. It's a poke. The Russians are trying to see what the Poles will do. It's a probing attack. They also are probably testing to see how good Polish air defenses are, right? It's just sort of like, let's just see how quick the Poles are. Let's test it out. And let's see how they respond. But look, make no mistake, Russia has no interest I know you and I have argued about this before, but history so far has been on my side. Russia, Putin have no interest whatsoever in invading any part of Eastern Europe or Central Europe at all, including Poland.
Yeah, we disagree on this. I do think he's licking his chops at the Baltics. I know that the Lithuanian people are scared shitless right now because they feel the same way.
They're high-strung people, as you know, Scott.
The Poles?
No, the Lithuanians.
Oh, well, let's face it. I mean, come on, every other week. Okay, who is it this week? Oh, the Russians? Okay.
Nothing personal.
I guess we're Russians this week. Oh, wait, we're German now? Really? Okay. Let me ask you, but for the edification of our viewers and listeners, were these drones headed towards Poland? I'm a little unclear as to where the drones were. Where were they destination?
They were in Eastern Poland. Nobody knows the destination. There was already, remember there was that incident early on in the war where what was originally accused of being a Russian missile made its way into Polish territory, but it turned out to have been a Ukrainian shell instead.
Yes.
That just went off target. Basically, look, Poland's next to Ukraine. Shit happens. I doubt that the Russian drones were sent in there accidentally. They're GPS. They're very precise and they're guided by GPS, even little home drones. So there's no way it's an accident. But it's right next to Ukraine, and it's kind of like it's a probing. It's a probe. It's a probing micro invasion.
But why? What would be? I mean,
I think it serves two purposes. One, to gather a little bit of intel on the Poles, take some pictures and stuff, and then also it's also kind of a reminder to the West and to Trump who are so obsessed with the Middle East right now. Don't forget about us. We have this situation. For all of his bluster, Putin would like to end the war in Ukraine and get the sanctions to disappear. He's okay without it. He's in a good negotiating position, but he would definitely like to end the war and get back to business. That's really what he would like.
I mean, but if he wanted to end the war, he could do it tomorrow by just saying, "Okay, we're giving the territories back. We're negotiating."
Why would he give territories back, considering that he captured them and he won them?
Well, because that would mean that he was serious about negotiating. I don't know that he was willing.
That's not negotiating. That would be Russia surrendering after they won.
If you give some stuff back, come on, can give a piece or two back. I mean, that's just how you got to sweeten the pot, and he wasn't sweetening the pot.
Well, Ukraine.
I don't know that he wants this to end, and I'm not sure the West wants it to end. I think the West is, Ted, between you, me, and the lamppost. I think it's money. Yeah, for Russia, it's money, but for the West,
and for the West, it's about money.
Well, they love this.
It's about the defense business. They get to try out all their new toys. Right?
Well, no, but more to the point, I think they also like the fact that Russia is distracted. They're not doing anything else. They're not going into any of the stands or any place else where they can have.
Why would they go into the stands? The stands would just welcome them in anytime they want to come.
Oh, you think you're saying the Uzbekistanis aren't proud nationalists?
Oh, the Uzbeks would love to rejoin Russia. Are you kidding?
What?
Oh, you're kidding. Yeah, in a second. They could make it a plebiscite. They would just join. They'd vote.
I love that. But they have such a great flag.
They miss the Russian days.
You can't vote against the flag. The flag is very solid.
Really? You like the Uzbek flag?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's the crescent moon with a bunch of stars next to it. Stair step. Yeah, you've seen it. You've walked underneath it.
I have. Yeah, it's the green's the same as the green on our banner here.
Yes, it is.
White and then sky blue. Sky blue, yeah.
So the other thing is I wanted to mention, because you talked about how precise the drones are. I would argue that they're not, given looking at what happened in Qatar, where they thought they were killing Hamas and they ended up killing like a birthday party.
Well, the target. I mean, the GPS targeting was spot on. They hit the exact building they were trying to hit. It's just that, as usual, when you're trying to fight aerial warfare instead of real warfare, man style on the ground, you don't fucking see anything and you don't know what's going on. You can hit the right building, but it's kind of like if someone decides to blow up my apartment building, trying to get me, but I'm out. They kill my cat instead.
Oh, poor Clovis.
Yeah, actually, Clovis would escape. He's wily.
He'd survive. He's a survivor.
Actually, it's true. It's really true that, like in bomb attacks and wars, cats often make it.
Why is that? Well, they're just sneaky. They probably fed intelligence to the people dropping the bombs. Ted and I do have. This is one area of passionate disagreement. He's a cat guy. I'm a dog guy.
True.
And we both think the other guy is wrong. So
we both know the other guy is wrong.
Looking down the road here, you mentioned Russia, of course, and Putin. Putin meeting with Z and, oh gosh, I can't remember the Indian.
Modi.
And I don't know why Kim Jong-un was in on this because, I think his GDP is roughly what I have.
Because he's a close ally of China.
I get that, but why would he be in an economic summit seems peculiar to say the least.
North Korea does a lot of things that you probably aren't aware of, Scott. Like, for example, they animate The Simpsons. Yeah.
God, isn't that crazy? That is so nuts. But that picture, that image, you have an American president who's, I think, certifiably insane, and doing and kind of courting off the United States economy. And being antagonistic towards allies, economic allies. So the economic allies are saying, oh, fuck you. Okay, we're going to do something else. There's other fish in the sea. The American century was driven by the fact that the United States controlled over 33% of the capital on the planet. That has never happened in the history of our species. And that's going down and down, and it's going to escalate. And I really do believe, Ted, and I want your take on this. Is this the end of the American century and the beginning of the Chinese century? And the century is, that's loose, but I think we're entering the Chinese century now. They're going to be the dominant power, which also means they'll be the dominant political power on the planet. So, this kind of weird amalgam of a communist party with raging capitalism. I don't know what you call it. It's not communism.
It's not communism.
Mao would be rolling over.
I call it capitalism with a veneer of socialist like banners hanging over the street. Pictures of Mao all over the place, lots of stuff, yellow writing on a red background, quotes from Lenin and Mao, and there you have it. It's it's socialistic, socialistish. But
it's like socialicious.
It's socialicious. It's obviously capitalist, though. It's crony capitalism at its finest. Scott, I'm going to disagree with you only on one point: the timing.
Okay.
I think we're not looking at the beginning of the Chinese century. I think the Chinese century is well underway. It's been a number of years now. I would argue that really, truly, when the United States lost its way when the Soviet Union collapsed, Francis Fukuyama called 1991 the end of history. And basically, I think we really fucked up. We viewed ourselves we felt like we didn't have any more competition left in the marketplace of ideology. Capitalism has won, socialism is defeated once and forever. So therefore, we can stop trying. And I think that's what happened. America stopped trying to be better than anyone or any other system. It just decided to coast. And you can see, what's the story of the 90s? The story of the 90s is basically the beginning of the end. And we derp into the 2000s with this embarrassing shell of an election and the Bush v. Gore controversy, our embarrassingly fucked up reaction to the 9/11 attacks, and our forever wars, followed by a raging long occupation, the fucking the disaster that became the Democratic Party, opening the space for all of these popular uprisings on the left and on the right, Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, which became MAGA and led to Trump. Our international influence is now. It used to be the U.S. was a country that other countries admired and aspired to. They looked at our Constitution and said, "Oh man, we'd love to have something like that." Now, new countries like South Sudan, they don't even look at the U.S. Constitution as a model anymore. It's not even like it's considered obsolete and old-fashioned. We have no dynamism. China has the dynamism. They have high-speed rail that goes to 10,000 feet up in the Himalayas, up to the Tibetan plateau that has to be pressurized. If the Chinese want to do something, they fucking do it. They have a space program. Theirs is expanding. Ours is contracting. We're handing everything over to the fucking to private industry and clowns like Elon Musk. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, at this point, the U.S. can continue to get its way militarily, but we're like the late Roman Empire. Now we're not ruling by example. We're ruling by fear. And people are afraid of, oh man, if we don't do what Trump wants, he might bomb us or sanction us. But they don't like us, and they don't aspire to be us. They're just putting up with us because we're bullies. So I think, the Chinese have a different model. They're renting hearts and minds all over the world.
Yeah, they are.
And they with the Belts and Roads initiative, they're throwing money around like it's going out of style, and it works. And I can see a lot of cons to it. But man, if you don't have to be, it's like the game of Risk, the old board game. You don't have to be a fucking like Machiavellian genius to look at the map and say, wow, when the world's 3 biggest countries, right, by different metrics, but China and India by population, Russia by size, get together with all that manpower, all that consumer base, all that workforce, and all those natural resources, and they get together and they decide to form an economic bloc and maybe even a currency that can challenge the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency and destroy the Bretton Woods system. Holy shit, right? I mean, you've got, and if we didn't have a tarred president and a tarred system, then we'd have smart Americans who'd be getting together and figuring out if there's some way we could, moderate and modulate this shift, but we don't. So no, it's President Xi's world, and we're just living in it.
I agree, and they also have plans that are 50-year plans, 75-year plans, 100-year plans, and they're doing it all over the planet, as you mentioned. And so places where, Central America, Africa, and we go there and they say, why don't you like us? And this is because, how do you help us other than put troops on the ground here? Where was that, Ted? About 2 years ago, an American serviceman was killed in not Central African Republic. It was Namibia. It was
Chad, I think it was.
Was it Chad? Well, I don't even think it was Chad. I think it was an even less known, because we know it's hanging Chads. You mentioned the 2000 election. But it was a small African nation, and we're just going,
I remember. It was Niger. It was Niger.
Was that? Yeah, Niger. That was it. And you say it correctly. And you're going, why was an American soldier there?
At all. We didn't even know that we had. Can you imagine, you're a dude who joined the military. You're not close to them, but you're friends. It's like, oh, by the way, Bob died in Niger. You'd be like, where? Why? It's like, oh yeah. He was fighting Al Qaeda. What? Why?
What? Yeah, exactly. And that's what we send. China sends money and infrastructure help. We send troops. Now, that's right. Who are you going to like?
That's true. Yeah, if I answer the door, who am I going to like better? If it's ICE with guns, or Amazon bringing me a box of cash?
You just touched on a topic that I wanted to ask you about, because you and I haven't talked about it either on or off the podcast, and that's the Supreme Court decisions that apparently ICE can stop you because of unforgivable brownness.
Yes, you can.
That's a terrifying decision. That really. Now, Ted, you live in New York City. When they did stop and frisk, was that upheld by the Supreme Court, or was it knocked down?
It was shot down.
That's what I thought. My memory was correct. Now, I just want to tell our listeners and our viewers this to pay attention to. The Supreme Court just in the last few days said they're going to listen to a case about the tariffs. Now, tariffs are dry as toast, and people don't understand them per se, or precisely what they do. But let me say this. This is the case of our lifetime. And I'll tell you why. Because the Constitution is abundantly clear. Ted, it is as clear as crystal when it says the right to budget and the right to levy tariffs is the duty of and responsibility of the legislature. Period. It does not equivocate. There is no wiggle room. The language, unlike some other stuff like the Second Amendment or other amendments, This is clear. The founding fathers felt strongly that the purse strings should be held by the legislature and the foreign policy and military strings should be held by the executive. Period. That's it. So if this Supreme Court, which seems to be Trump's bitch so far, when it agrees that whatever the president does is legal and he is sheltered from any legal ramifications for what he or she will do, they just, like I said, the ICE actions that they don't have to have probable cause to stop somebody and search them. By the way, ICE doesn't identify itself. They don't have badges. And they wear fucking masks. I think nothing is more abhorrent and tells the world what America is becoming more than an ICE agent.
Couldn't agree more.
But when it comes down to tariffs, mark my words, if the Supreme Court rules that Donald Trump can arbitrarily issue and apply tariffs, then the American system is officially over.
Agreed.
Period. And I know, like I said, tariffs, not the sexiest issue in the world, not the easiest to understand, but this is the one, this is the issue, folks. This is the decision. And if they decide correctly and say that the legislature, President Trump, you can't do this, then I think we might be okay. I don't think they're going to rule that way, Ted. I'm convinced they're not, that they're going to come. I mean, the fact that they let the president say that anything the president does is legal, once you make that decision and you make that leap, that legal leap, Betty bar the doors, right? I mean, it's over. So
agreed. Yeah.
They're going to hear the case. I believe they're going to hear it in the next few weeks. They'll probably expedite the decision, but although October is coming up, so they can issue all the decisions then. This is it. This is the moment. And if they decide that Trump can issue tariffs, America is officially over.
Without congressional approval.
Well, no, not even Chris. Yeah, he has to go to the Congress and say, "Listen, I want to, have tariffs against, Djibouti goods because the Djiboutians, poor man Somalia. Oh my God." He has to go to the Congress and ask them to issue the tariff.
Right.
And so if they say that the president if the executive branch has the authority to do this, it is a direct affront to the as clear language as you could have in the Constitution, and America is over. Now, what do we mean when we say America's over? Listen, Spain stood astride the world as the big swinging cock that it was, right, for 100 years, until it wasn't, until England stepped up. Prior to them, it was Portugal. Somewhere in that mix, there was
the Dutch were in there too at one point.
There was a Dutch century. Now we've had our century, and that century may be over. And if the decision comes down the way I think it will, that's where historians will point to and say, okay, and that doesn't mean America ceases to exist. That doesn't mean that we don't have elections or that we don't.
The land is still here. The cows are still here. The birds are still here. Yeah, everything's still here.
Yeah, people are still here. We're just not, we're going to be the Dutch of the world, which is not bad. They make klompens. They have the propeller buildings. It's all good. But it's going to be, and we'll still do things and we'll still be a country, but we won't be what we were, certainly what we projected ourselves to be, Ted. And I know that you and many, many people kind of took umbrage with that anyway. So maybe that's a good thing, that we take a step back from being the world's policeman and we take a step back from telling everybody else how they should run their business. Maybe. I mean,
look, I'm against colonialism and imperialism. And so therefore I'm okay with it. It's unfortunate that we have to learn our lesson this way, by basically pissing everyone off and forcing them to form alliances against us, rather than simply what if we had decided 50 years ago simply to make our country our priority, to say we're going to care about what the American people need and want, and we're going to make that number one, and then we'll worry about helping other countries as a distant number two. We would have ended up in the same place and made far fewer enemies. 9/11 would have never happened. It would have just been, we would have been in a better place. And this is kind of like where we needed to end up. I think, Scott, I'm interested in the tariff ruling, though, because I think the Supreme Court generally, especially, you're right, they're Trump's bitch, and generally they're the government's bitch in general. But I was reading the government's filing on this, and the government's defense basically is, well, their main defense is, we've already collected $1 trillion in tariffs, and we're going to have to give it all back if you rule against us. And I'm like, if that's your main defense, you're probably going to lose, right? That's not a very good defense. I mean, that's up there with something we haven't talked about. By the way, Scott, we should probably talk about this. Just personally, I don't know if you heard about this Anthropic AI lawsuit, but basically Anthropic is an AI company that scraped books and other intellectual property to train their AI. They were sued, a class action lawsuit. They were forced to settle for $1.5 billion. And as part of the settlement, if you find that they used your book, you can get $3,000, basically. Now, they still get to keep the scraping. This is kind of like, I break into your house, I steal your stereo, I pay you a nominal fee for it after the cops catch me, and then I keep your stereo. So it's kind of like that. But you might want to, I'll send you the website later.
Yeah, would you please?
Anybody who's got a book, you'd look to see if your book's in there. And if so, then you put in the ISBN number.
Have you looked to see if is your book in?
6 of them.
Are you serious?
Totally serious. Yeah.
So get some of that sweet, sweet $1 billion, brother. Take your friend out for drinks.
Yep. I stand to make $18,000. But yeah.
Well, that's 3 cups of coffee. That'll work.
Better than a kick in the ass. It's true.
So what was your question?
I mean, if I think
about tariffs. They're arguing for tariffs, right?
The Supreme Court's probably predisposed to ruling in favor of the administration. But how do they justify doing that if the administration hasn't given them a legal hook to hang their hat on?
You can't use the argument that, we've already spent the money. It would be like trying to say, you can't charge me for robbing the convenience store. I already spent the money.
Right. Exactly.
That's
That's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, if that's the argument, then it's even dumber than I thought. But dumber arguments have seemed to prevail in this Supreme Court. So we'll see where it goes. Yeah. There may be that. I don't know. Has there ever been? I'm trying to think of Supreme Court decisions where they say that the implementation or going back would be so onerous and that you don't have to pay. Maybe they could issue saying that you don't have to pay this back, but at this point going forward, they're no longer legal. I mean, I guess you could do that.
You could do that. I mean, look, there have been cases where basically the government has said it would be onerous for us to comply. And therefore, we'd appreciate if you'd rule in our favor. And it has worked, but it hasn't been like a primary argument. It's always been a secondary or tertiary. A lot of legal arguments are constructed that sort of along the lines of, here's what I basically think I want the court to do. But if you don't agree with that, let me give you another argument that you might agree with, and so on.
Well, wouldn't that run in the same vein as Gore v. Bush in 2000, when they just said, it's just, okay, we've gotten to the point where recounts are just too onerous. We're going to make a decision now, stop the recount. Enough's enough. I mean, I guess you could do.
Well, that was a political decision. They didn't make a legal decision there, which is why they decertified the decision to say that it could never be used as a precedent. They decided to stop the clock. Bush was the plaintiff in that case, and Bush did not make the argument that it was just that it was too much time had passed. He made other arguments. Gore created an opening by not asking for a recount in every county. And so which obviously the correct approach at the Florida Supreme Court should have been recount the entire state. And by the way, I never understood, if I ever meet Al Gore, I'm going to ask him this question. Like, how stupid were you? You only asked for recounts in Democratic dominated counties. you're going to find more undercounts of Democratic votes in Republican counties than in Democratic counties, right?
Have you not met Al Gore? I thought you were you at the Memphis convention, editorial cartoonist convention?
I was not.
Okay, because then Senator Gore came to speak, and he was delightful and charming and funny and very human. I mean, like I said, being close to I've always said this, being close to the Clintons is like being close to plutonium. It just changes your DNA. You just become
well, it's like Trump.
Person.
It's not good to be close to Trump either.
No, well, all of a sudden you become Marco Rubio. Good Lord. We've reached, I think we've reached our time. We can actually bail out on time, Ted. Think about that for just a moment. Robbie must be thrilled to death, our producer. Hey, Robbie.
Howdy.
Hey. So we're about to say Auf Wiedersehen as, one of the, he just left again. Well, it was nice to see him.
Yep.
Well, and now he's back. And now he's gone. And now he's back.
What the hell, Ted? I mean, I like a freaking yo-yo.
I have the power.
Like a damn terrier just shaking a sock or something.
All right, guys. Now we're entering the musical accompaniment section of our presentation. So if you're ready, Scott, and feel free to join in.
I'm going to do it in honor of one of the countries we just talked about in terms of its domination of the world.
Do this, and I just want to make sure I click this correctly because I'm
not
that good at this. Yeah. Definitely want to do that. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay. And away.
Eyes, you're Spanish. Your eyes are Spanish. They're Spanish eyes. Bum 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 bum. Oh, Spanish eyes, you had our Armada, and now you don't. They're Spanish eyes. DMZ America, the podcast.